What is up to all the difference makers? You know, if you're a regular listener to the show, you know I open up pretty gushing over every guest that I have, and I'm super excited. But I think as I was sitting and thinking about it today, it's because I go and I have this plan to bring on the most influential and best people for the guests and for you to listen to. And I'm super, super, super excited about the guy that I have in the studio today. He's been on my mind to have in here for a while, and I'm so glad that I finally reached out and asked him. He agreed to come all the way in and be in the studio. So I've heard of this guy several years ago. My brother was blessed to know him through State Farm and have a relationship with him through there. And I happen, as most of you know, live in downtown Brighton. And my son had started playing flag football. And my brother Jordan said, "Oh, I hope he continues playing football and he gets to be coached by my friend Sean McGraw, who coaches youth football." And then fast forward a few years later, my son was finally about to play tackle football, and he signed up for this speed and agility camp. And I was sitting and listening and watching, and I heard this loud, amazing motivational voice booming across the crowd. And then later I found out that was the Sean McGraw that my brother Jordan was talking about. And then my son Jackson was had a very grateful situation to be able to be coached by Sean a couple years. And he said, hands down, by far his favorite coach of all time. And I don't think Sean knows this, but something that I talk about constantly, a phrase of words that I think about almost every single day happened. I would literally, I was telling Grant before Sean got here, I'd go to practices just to hear this guy's speeches. And I remember specifically, it was the first year Jackson played, and there was a pretty good group of boys, but they had just lost a game and they were out of the playoffs. And so it was like this practice where, you know, a lot of kids were disappointed and it could be easy to feel like there's nothing left to play for. And Sean pulled the group of boys together and really gave this awesome story speech about building the foundation. And not everything is for this year. It's, you know, not the end all isn't this year, but it's building this foundation. And he said these string of words that I think about every single day and I talk about to my clients. It's been a big foundation of what I do. Is you're either winning or you're learning in life. And that is so true. You've all heard it on here, but Sean, man, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you here and to continue talking about some of this amazing stuff.
Well, I'm humbled by what you shared, and I'm blessed to be here. And so I hope even one thing I say today is a blessing to at least one person listening. Every time I go into a presentation or I talk to the team or have any opportunity to be in a coaching situation, my prayer in my heart is always that I'll reach the one, that there's at least one person that will be blessed and benefit from something that is said. And I know there are countless people that I've been blessed from listening to their words. And so the opportunity to pay it forward to me is priceless.
It's so huge. And I think that people don't understand that sometimes, is that the right people in life will help you. They will bless you. There are people like yourself that want to help and mentor and reach other people and impact them.
If we really look at how much time we have in life as an adult to be able to get to where we've healed from some of the baggage of the past, we've gotten to the point where we're comfortable in our own skin, we've learned to lead with love and maybe set our selfish ambitions aside and put something that's a greater cause at the center of your effort, your heart, your time. When we get there, how much time do we really have to move the needle for good? Which when you take away an O is just moving the needle for God. And for me, that's what everything is about. And so in this limited window, is there even one single day that can be wasted? Stop acting like we're going to live twice.
Yeah.
When in reality, we have a very limited window of time, but that like a pebble in the pond, the ripples are felt for sometimes generations to come by people who have made a difference in the lives of others. And I know I have countless mentors, coaches, and even friends who have moved that needle for me in that way, and they may not even know it.
Yes. That's what I love. And that's one of the things that I love about being able to share that story, even with having you here, is like, the people that have poured into me or people that have impacted me. And sometimes it's just a little thing. Sometimes it's just those words, right, that you listen to. And it's like that light bulb moment that changes your life, or impacts great thought. letting those people know, because you never know what those people are going through in life. You know, I reached out to this manager that I had that was just really impacted the way I led. I reached out. I made a video. I was doing this Tuesday Tude thing where I'd like give my gratitude for just random people that impacted my life, and I'd make a video and post it on social media just to tag that person in and kind of trying to create this whole movement. Long story, but she called me afterwards and she was crying and she was like, I didn't know. And she was like, and I've been kind of going through some hard times, and so it was so impactful to hear how I changed you, because sometimes you don't know that, you don't realize what you've done for people.
I'm a firm believer that you can't give what you don't have. And I think the process of filling your bucket intentionally every day, feeding your mind, body, and spirit, it doesn't happen by accident. Even the most consistent of us struggle, and typically on a daily basis from time to time, right? But there's times when we forget to fill our bucket. We may neglect our mind, our body, or spirit, or even all three. If we go through a time of incredible trial, heartbreak, we lose a loved one, maybe we lose a job that we've attached our identity to subconsciously, and now what do we do next? It's really important for us to be able to make sure that we can get our mind right in those times and then be able to take the next right step.
What do you do in order to get your mind right?
It's critical for me to make sure that as I talk about mind, body, and spirit and filling that bucket, right? Mm-hmm. So that when the time comes that maybe something happens that we allow to distract us and we stop filling that bucket, it's really important that we make sure that we understand what is the foundation. For me, it's the Spirit. I crave that connection with God. He craves that connection with me, and it's in that relationship that I feel like I am living in the joy zone, where I'm living an inspired, guided, directed life. My will is not my own. I'm surrendering my will today to be able to be asking for the privilege to be put in a position to be able to be a blessing to someone else. And so whether it's reading the Word, whether it's, I have a collection of different books I brought in today. These are the current 4 books that I've been in over the last 3 months, because I believe we've always got to be filling our bucket in our mind as well.
Yeah.
So with the Spirit, between prayer, meditation, reading the Word, between finding uplifting books that really are allowing me to live according to my principles and not be ruled by my emotions, okay? So then I've also got my body, right? I've got a boot camp program. I'm also walking now. This amazing thing happens being a bigger guy. I always lose like 10 to 15 pounds in the course of football season. And then I go back to my just job, and then inevitably those 10 to 15 pounds find me again, right? It's the walking. And so when we learn something works, we add that to our regimen. So for me, it's mind, body, spirit, intentionally taking time each day to fill those buckets up. And you and I know in reality, some days, the body might only get a half an hour. Some days it's a recovery day and the body, doesn't get any type of fill that day. But even recovery should be intentional. So those are the 3 things that I do to fill my bucket, so that hopefully someday I'm not desperate to have someone fill it back up because I haven't allowed it to empty.
Well, and it's so big for people. I know you have this servant heart. I have a servant heart, and to go out and impact people, so many of us do forget to fill our bucket, or neglect to even really understand what fills up our bucket. So for you to have that definition, and for you to really understand yourself enough to know these are the areas, and this is what I'm going to do to focus on it, is a big differentiator.
Didn't wake up knowing that.
I was going to ask. Yeah.
No. In fact, I wore a shirt today that's near and dear to my heart, that mindset is everything. Mm-hmm. The reality is that we have a war going on in our minds. It's not a battle. Battles come, you'll have a war as a series of battles. A battle indicates that this might come to an end. No, the war is ongoing. And it's a series of battles, and the battles can be fought from moment to moment. And in reality, something I've really strived to do is not allow my emotions to rule my behavior. And that's very difficult, right?
Yeah.
Because once we get into that emotional mind, our logical mind shuts off. It's an anatomical fact. They cannot, at the same time, both coexist.
Yep.
So
it's why you say all those stupid things that you regret in the middle of an argument when your emotions are heated and you want to walk that back, and you feel so embarrassed for saying that when your emotions have calmed down and you're in your logical brain.
And regret, I think if there's knowing what you want in life, there's also knowing what you don't want.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the pain of growing and learning how to fill your bucket in the mind, body, spirit triangle of success, I feel like when we don't do that, we're really our own worst enemy. When we tell ourselves in an emotional state all of the things that are wrong with us instead of all of the things that are true.
Yes.
When we talk about what's happening to us instead of what's happening for us. When we get trapped in that victim mindset instead of saying, what is this event or what is this trial or affliction that I'm going through supposed to be growing me or teaching me about? What is it supposed to be accomplishing in my life?
So you said, this hasn't always been there. What is your journey? How did this unfold? You talked about the mentors, and I don't know your story. How did you arrive to be here?
Blessed in high school to really just be on fire for football, and had some amazing coaches who supported me, saw that there was some talent. I was certainly not born on third base. I might have been born just with a foot off of first base, but they encouraged me in my pursuit of lifting and training. I was never mistaken to be fast, but I was always blessed to be stronger than most of my opponents. And so for me, it was trying to find where my strengths were and trying to play to those strengths. But that was where it all started. And being able to be a captain of a football program, being blessed to be, a 3-year starter on varsity, which for me was humbling. It was overwhelming at times, but it was exactly what all my dreams had always been about. And really having that there and that opportunity to lead and the humility that came from skinning my knees time and time again.
Yeah.
Realizing that it's how you make people feel that causes them to want to follow you or not. It's not what you're saying.
Yep.
And if someone feels that you love and you care about them and you want what's best for them, and that your leadership isn't about making you look better, it's about helping them be what they were created to be. When they feel that, they will follow. And I missed that point.
Yeah.
In high school.
Oh, you missed that point in high school.
I missed that point. That was one of the areas where failure was a teacher. And so my journey started off there. And as this, we go from being an undefeated team, losing to Heartland in the playoffs as a junior, to being 3-6 as a senior, the year I was a captain.
Oh.
And understanding that no amount of want to or will to could replace the process that had not been paid, the price that had not been paid to fall in love with the process, with the team collectively. And you and I know when you're on a team, you hear that phrase, you're only as strong as your weakest link.
Yeah.
And when we come into adversity, we fall back into our training. So we didn't earn anything better than 3-6 that year. But for me as a leader, I realized that there was a lot more to this than just trying to sound in charge and saying the right things. Mm-hmm. And so the dream was always college football. I went to Grand Valley State my freshman year, and I was on the scout team. And I remember playing against the right guard, Beckler. His nickname was Jabba. He was like 350 pounds, and he was really skilled and strong. Uh-huh. And I remember going against him on the scout team, and I remember I had beaten him on a play or two, and I'll never forget what he said. He said, I like you. You seem like you're a really good guy. But if you beat me again, I'm going to fall on your leg and I'm going to break it. So why don't you just take a couple hard steps into me and then let me block you, and then this is all going to be good for both of us. And of course you're nervous laughing right in the moment. It was humbling. And it also helped me understand something, that the dream to play college football wasn't really the dream. And so it was amazing. During that season, I just felt convicted that I needed to go and serve a mission, a 2-year mission. At the time, I was raised Mormon, and it was common for the young men to go on a 2-year mission. And so that was something that hadn't been on my heart in the past, but it just really God put it on my heart during that year on the scout team, right? During that part of the season when I was there, because I had also gotten injured as well running sprints, and there was the humility of being on the med squad. It was all an opportunity to grow me. It wasn't happening to me, it was happening for me, and I just didn't know it at the time, right?
Yep.
They say the male mind matures until like 28 to 30. And I know that I think, to 32. I mean, it just took me way longer than most. But for me, that conviction to go led me to put in mission papers, and I was called to Australia, Perth, Australia. So you go almost halfway around the world.
A completely different place than where we're at right now. Like, they're going through summer right now, and then they're the next day.
You know, and I laugh when they said the toilet flushes in the opposite direction, but in the southern hemisphere, it does.
It does. It's crazy.
It does. It's insane. It's insane. Just like driving on the other side of the road.
Oh, I don't know how I would do it.
It wasn't bad over there. It was bad coming back.
Yeah.
Because you were so used to it. But it was there when knocking on doors. It was there talking to people on the street. It was there when I really had to step outside of myself and learn how to deal with rejection. And it's something I've even struggled with up until now, but it's gotten better. And I think and it wasn't a coincidence that I felt moved to go and spend that time in Australia. And so regardless of the denomination, I challenge young people to go find an opportunity, go on a church mission to Africa, even if it's for 2 weeks. You know, go and Habitat for Humanity, help build a home. Go to a shelter and serve a meal. Go and help pick up trash. Do things that get you outside of yourself and get you to do things for others, because it's when you are living for others that you find yourself. And so those 2 years in Australia, you know, I think my dad's biggest fear is that I would come back early. And I told my dad before I left, the only way I'll come back is in a body bag. And I said that to myself more than once. And anybody that knows me knows I'm kind of an intense cat. But what you say when you talk to yourself matters, right?
Yeah.
And so I was telling him, I'm not going anywhere. No matter what I face, I will find a way to grow from it, to overcome it. And it was there, you know, you're intentionally reading the Bible, you're reading the Word, you know, you're filling the spirit part. And the mind part, you're learning how to teach, you're learning how to resolve concerns, you're learning, in my case, I was blessed with leadership opportunities, so I traveled around, I was a trainer, I presented, you know, to large crowds of people as a 19 to 21-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Okay, and then physically, I got into skipping rope, and I was so excited, I got up to 4,500 skips in a row without messing up.
Wow.
It was like 45, 58, I messed up. Never did it again, by the way, my knees are shot.
Is it a result of the jump roping or no?
I'm sure it's never the 100th blow that breaks the stone, the boulder, right?
Yeah.
It's the 99 before it.
Yep.
But it was there where I really fell in love with the process of making sure that I was filling my bucket. But even so, when I came back, I had a lot to learn. I had a lot to learn as far as what it meant to really live for your passion and your purpose versus to do what you thought was the next right step. And so for me, I spent a lot of my 20s trying to figure out how to assimilate back into a world that wasn't a mission field in Australia, that wasn't 24 hours a day service.
Yeah.
And it was pretty anticlimactic. I felt pretty empty. I felt like I was really living for something far bigger than myself, living for God, living for other people during that 2-year window. And what happened was when I came back, I just was trying to figure out how to fill it.
Yeah.
And so I was
almost like a drug, right? Like it's filling that void.
Yes. And I feel like when we are honest with ourselves, everyone's addicted to something. And whether or not that addiction's healthy or that addiction's hurtful really determines whether or not we're able to move forward and fulfill what we were created to be. So yes, there's absolutely an addiction. And I think the danger in the addiction is making that addiction performance or outcome based instead of principle and process based. And so, we look at that time during my 20s. I met my sweetheart. She was my boss. She was, I had worked so I was going to Michigan State year round. I was taking less credit so that I could work full time. Okay. So I was working at a child care center. I was selling appliances at Sears on pure commission. And, I met her there. She came in. The lady that had hired me left. She had a disagreement with the director. And so Cheryl is my wife's name. She came in the last 6 weeks to be the substitute head teacher to finish the year. And so she had just graduated from Michigan State, was interviewing to become a teacher. And I was going to Michigan State for elementary education.
That's awesome.
Because I thought I wanted to teach and definitely wanted to coach. Because anybody that really had moved the needle for me in my life was a coach. Absolutely. And so as a tribute to them, to want to bless other people, I mean, there's a myriad of reasons that we coach, right? The critical thing is that we always be coaching. And so for me, meeting her, I met the person that I'm trying to become. Her heart is a pure heart. It's not very many people you meet that have a pure heart. And I think that's probably, reading the word and hearing David was described as a man after God's own heart. She has that kind of heart. And I think especially men spend their entire lives trying to learn how to love. And if they love, trying to learn how to live that love out loud and to let their heart or their love be what they lead with. She already had it. And I just admired her. And I remember she interviewed for her job as a teacher, and she dressed up in a beekeeper costume, and she did that lesson. And I'm like, I admired her. I was so proud of her. But she had this heart about her. And I was so far from that. I was just obsessed with trying to get into the job because I was obsessed with performance and outcome. I was basing who I was based on what I was accomplishing.
Yeah.
And that wasn't what she was about. She wasn't going into teaching to be independently wealthy. That had been her dream since as long as she could remember. She had pursued it, but she did it out of her heart. And yes, she got paid. Because we have to get paid, right? We have bills to pay.
Yeah.
But that was not her motive. And I admired that. And so then I spent my 30s trying to figure out how to love. And that's where my journey really began.
So tell me more. I'm like on the edge.
I think we can't move forward until we look back and heal the hurts of the past. And that baggage in growing up and feeling guilty a lot, like I couldn't measure up, like there was a checklist of things I wasn't accomplishing in every area, mind, body, spirit, and feeling overwhelmed by that. And then going and finding, at the time, there was a major event in my life that really demanded my attention, because I believe either you're going to be brought to your knees or you're going to voluntarily get on your knees. But one way or another, you're going to get on your knees. And I didn't volunteer. And this event in my life, although be it very private, was incredibly impactful. And so for me, it led me into, at the time, Cynthia was a therapist. And what I began to do with her was I began to just unpack the baggage from the past. And I was seeing her every week. And then it kind of became, as the years went on, every other week. And she went from a therapist to a counselor. And then it got to the point where I really plugged in at church, at Oak Point Church in Novi. Plugged in there, joined the men's golf group, worked with the high school ministry, and just began to volunteer and really began to crave connection and relationship with God versus living a checklist and feeling inadequate and guilty most of the time.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then she became a life coach, and I actually called her my life coach. And then it came the time when I didn't need to see Cynthia anymore. And she had done her part as probably the most impactful coach in my life outside of life itself.
It's incredible.
I'm not sure she understands that impact. I remember in our last meeting, she gave me a hug, and I gave her a hug, and I thanked her. I didn't know it was going to be our last meeting, but I just felt like I needed to thank her. Thank her for being a catalyst to changing my life. And then what I found is I heal that hurt from the past, I became comfortable in my own skin. And when you become comfortable in your own skin and you don't spend time in the rearview mirror and you spend time looking forward and living in the present more consistently than you had in the past, all of a sudden now you're positioned to be able to make that impact you were created to make.
Is it like not worrying about what people think? In that sense, like being able to be free and be yourself.
Who are you?
Yeah. True.
It seems ridiculous on the surface, but when you look in the mirror, and I believe the eyes are a window into the soul, and you look in your eyes in the mirror, is there substance or is it hollow? Are you living for you and what makes you feel good and chasing an addiction that might be hurting you? Or are you living for him and for others? And are your eyes full of light or are they dim? And so when we look in the mirror and we say, who am I? Understand that's a moving target. And if we don't fill our days with mind, body, spirit, bucket filling, we're probably going to have less light and more dark. And for me, I love the definition of darkness. It's really not a thing. It's just the absence of light. So we can fill our buckets with that light, and therefore we can be the light. So who are we? I think in large measure defining what it is that we need to do to continue to grow in that triangle of success, mind, body, spirit, making sure we're intentionally doing that. And then how are we moving the needle for good? Now we're comfortable in our own skin. Now we're in the God zone. Now we're living in joy, right? Now we're living in the full measure of our creation. And we're on a path where we're not distracted by the shiny objects as much as we are distracted by things that we know can draw us closer. So when I see a book like Chop Wood, Carry Water, and I say, okay, because the head coach, Joe Woodruff, at Zeeland East that I'm blessed to coach for.
Yeah.
When I left Brighton Youth Football, I left that volunteering and that community that I came to love because I went to an IEP for my daughter who, at the time, he was the teacher that volunteered to come to the IEP. Okay. And so, she had an IEP and it was her time for that, annual renewal for that and making sure she had the accommodations she needed to have the best chance of success in the upcoming year. And we got talking football. And I was able to talk about that opportunity to be blessed to coach in Brighton. Thanks to Brandon Crew, who I met through State Farm. And, I saw Brandon, just like your brother, Jordan, I saw him at the State Farm Fall Planning Conference.
That's awesome.
And I saw a lot of people that I admire and a lot of people that have moved the needle for good in my life and probably will never know the impact. And I admire them, right? So I saw him, but when Joe Woodruff was there and we were talking football, he goes, you really should come on staff. He didn't need me on his staff. You and I know that. He's always inviting coaches in to grow. And whether you're a coach with 20 years experience and you really know the X's and O's, but maybe you don't approach leadership and coaching with the same heart Joe does. Because just like I admire my wife, Cheryl, and her heart, I coach with Joe because of who he is.
Yeah.
And the fact that by being around him, I'm a better man, I'm a better leader, and I'm sure as heck a better coach because that guy's like Yoda with the X's and O's on the board. It's amazing. I mean, he's forgotten more about football than I'll ever know. But being around someone like that, right, it fills you.
Absolutely.
And I want to be there where I feel like I can make the greatest difference. So for me, it was really intentionally saying, all right, let me pray. That sounds like that's something I want to consider. And then going and prayerfully considering and just feeling this feeling that that's what I wanted to do. So I scheduled an appointment with Joe. I remember going into the coach's office at Lakeland, and Joe's like, absolutely. We'd love to have you on staff. Why do you want to be on staff? My reasons have changed since I began coaching with him 5 years ago.
What are they now?
Right now, I recognize that the wisdom we gain in life, we don't wake up with it. And that wisdom comes through learning experience on the path, finding the landmines sometimes by stepping on them, seeing them sometimes by where others that we love and care about step on them. And it's being able to let those that are behind you know a successful way to navigate the path ahead, but recognizing that your way isn't the only way. Mm-hmm. But there is that mindset is everything. And really being able to be a blessing. I'll tell you what, it's not about X's and O's. It's about molding men. We use a game, which I happen to think is the greatest game on the planet.
Yeah.
And it's a game you have to know the X's and O's in. People on staff have to know that. But in reality, to a man, it's really about molding men. And it's in those relationships that we find our greatest sense of satisfaction. So if you took the opposite of what we fear, and that's regret. So we're trying to live today to avoid that regret in the future, right? Because we can't go back. We're not going to live it twice. Yeah. So if we think in terms of those, what's the opposite of regret?
Fulfillment.
I feel like it's joy.
Joy.
And you feel fulfilled in joy.
Yep.
Pleasure is passing.
Yeah.
Happiness is situational often.
Yep.
But joy doesn't matter what the circumstances are. It doesn't care about what's happening to you. Joy is learning how to find purpose in the everyday pain, finding progress, in that pain.
Yeah.
And then helping share the lessons from that pain with others and assisting them in their journey. Now, you and I know there's certain things we have to learn from experience, that it doesn't matter how many times we're told a particular concept. For us, we're a little hard-headed there, and we struggle there, and we're going to have to learn it by experience. But what's amazing is when we have been told and we end up having to learn it by experience, those words come back in our head.
They come back. Absolutely.
But it's not an I told you so.
Yeah.
It's I cared about you. I wanted you to know that.
Yes.
And now the lesson's been reinforced, and you're safe. You're well.
Yes.
I got to say this for my dad, the trifecta of mortality, upright, vertical, and breathing. Although I think upright and vertical are redundant.
They sound the same.
And the truth is I can't stand that phrase. I love you, Dad. I can't stand it. Because to me, it's living in a scarcity mentality. And the reality is there's so much opportunity around us.
Yeah.
Personally, professionally, spiritually. Help people who are struggling. And everybody needs something different from moment to moment.
Yep.
So if you're filling your bucket in those 3 ways we've talked about, you're going to be ready when that person needs you to be ready. Because really, when you're doing that for them, you're really doing it for him.
Well, and to your point, you don't know. You've mentioned several people that don't know the weight of which they've impacted you. I talked about at the beginning how that the winning or learning in your speech, how it so greatly impacted me, and it's something I think about constantly. And you didn't know that. That's been like 3 years that that's happened, and you think about that. But and you said at the very beginning, if I impact, I don't know if you said it before we were recording or what, but you said if I impact one person, if one person hears what I'm saying, if one person hears that message, then it was worth doing and saying, right? It was worth carrying through, and that's what this is all about. You know, when I was sitting down to have conversations with people in the coffee shop, and it was like I was leaving a better man, a better business owner, a better father. I got a different perspective on life. I heard different people's stories and challenges, and there's times where I was having pity parties for myself, and I heard somebody else's challenges that were way worse than me, or like something I couldn't imagine happening to my family. And it's like, this person's persevering, and, you know, hearing these things, and it's like, how many people start businesses that they stay in their pride, they stay in their, I'm going to go do this by myself. And then they're in their vulnerability, and they don't think that anybody else is going through any of these challenges or any of these pains, or they don't do that work that you've done to understand who they are. They don't understand where they are at their best. They don't understand that what it is about impacting and changing people, right? Or being outward and thinking about other people, or thinking about God versus thinking of yourself. And when they can sit in and tune in and hear this message, does that change them, right? Or maybe they just hear that one word that just changes all their thoughts, or changes their perspective, or starts changing that. Because as you said, and I love it how you said this, is like, you've had profound different things that have happened that have shifted your perspective, but it wasn't like you woke up the next day and it was a completely different person.
No, it's chopping wood and carrying
It's chopping wood and carrying the water.
Which is just the consistency day after day.
Yeah.
Of doing what needs to be done. The things that are holding you back are where you need to set your habits, in my humble opinion. So if your habit is, I don't read, I'm not filling my mind, then we have to set up a habit to even read for 5 minutes a day. Or for me, I like to read and listen to the audiobook. So the same book, you know, read a chapter, listen to a chapter, listen to a chapter, read a chapter. And it's that reinforcement that really allows me to be able to let that knowledge that I need make that 18-inch path from my head to my heart, right? Because it's got to sink into that, oftentimes, that hard heart. But it's the one, when I was on my way over here, and this doesn't make me a hero, just makes me a Christian. Mm-hmm. My prayer was that my tongue would be loosened, my mind would be open, that I would be inspired, that I wouldn't speak my will in my words, and then I might be able to reach the one. Because every time there's a presentation done, every time there's, you know, a Zoom meeting or talking to a team, it's always, please help me to reach the one that needs this right now.
Yeah.
Or the one that doesn't know they need it, but those words come back later when they learn by experience.
Yeah.
Those words that may have warned them or invited them to choose a different path. And then they've had to learn, and then those words reinforce the lesson in a way that is felt with the heart. Because I believe when someone hears our words, they hear our heart. Mm-hmm. And there can be a delayed response in that. Could be moments, could be years. But the reality is, at some point, what we're saying impacted that one. And I believe the one and that whole concept is really critical, because for me in my life, the growth and the healing has come one-on-one in times of grateful meditation, prayer, listening, filling my head with things like Christian music, or you could listen to any kind of music or even subliminal things that inspire you, but intentionally filling my mind with things that are filling me and not leading me into the greatest tool that I believe that the devil has or society has. That greatest tool, right? It's your mind, and it's that war in your mind, right? But it's that tool of discouragement. Yes. And I feel like when someone gets discouraged and they start to believe the lie or the lies, and they don't believe that success is right for them, and they feel like bad things are happening and they're always going to happen, I feel like that one-on-one, we all go through that from time to time. That person is us.
Yes.
Amazing. I was blessed. Jamie is a mentor of mine, and he gave me a book, The Tale of Three Kings, and it's a study in brokenness. It's a study in leadership. And remember how I mentioned David and how, you know, a man after God's own heart. In my case, Cheryl, my wife, person after God's own heart. I wanted to study more about David's leadership in the off season. So every off season, there's a course of study. Last year, it was getting to neutral. It Takes What It Takes by Trevor Moawad, who, rest his soul, he passed. But learning how to get out of the negativity, learning how to shift, into neutral, find the truth around you so you can find the next right step, right? That was last year. This year it was when we were going through a tough patch this season. Coach Woodruff said, hey, he gave a speech, chop wood, carry water. Well, maybe that one was me. Maybe I was the one person that needed that. Because then it led me to find the book in the off season. I'm like, I've got to study this chop wood, carry water. And then we've got A Tale of Three Kings and the story of David and how his leadership was all about surrender. Surrender to the one who was leading him. Brokenness. Not trying to force his agenda. Striving to be inspired. Mm-hmm. And when it was his time to no longer lead, stepping aside and recognizing that it wasn't about him. It was about the one who called him and that work he was about. And so I'm really trying. I'm going back through it because, I can't pick it up in one go. For me, it's 3-4 times through. So It's less about consuming a quantity of different books and more about spending time revisiting a collection of books that's really moving the needle in the directions I need to fill my bucket.
Well, because it's really about taking these things and putting things into action, right? It's about processing it and literally, again, putting it into your life to let it play out. And when you're reading just tons of books, there's so many conflicting things that I see a lot of times. I see a lot of people that will just pick up all these books and then they kind of get stuck. They're afraid to almost even make a move because the 4 different books they read all told them different things to do.
And I think that's where you've got to learn how to filter your way through the noise.
Yeah.
These authors are all well-intending.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Not everything they have to say, just like a cafeteria, right? Yeah. Cafeteria style, take what you want, leave the rest. Not everything they have to say is for you to apply. And so for me, it was in the beginning self-help books.
Yeah.
When I'm going through and I'm meeting with the therapist turned counselor turned life coach, and it was trying to get my mind, just even learning what was wrong with my thinking.
Yeah.
So you say, what do you do to get your mind right? And mindset is everything. Well, you've got to understand yourself and you've got to understand the ways that your mind isn't right. And so that self-awareness was critical. But for me, it's finding the books that align with my principles.
Yes.
And then pouring into those, because then I'm not going to get as much conflicting directions.
Yes. And I think that's huge. Is like your core values, like your principles, like that's your guiding, your compass, right?
The program is this amazing leadership group of military. They actually have a book called The Program.
Okay.
I know they went into Michigan State. They go into college football and sports teams, and they put them through training.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's training the mind, right? I mean, they're using physical training to train the mind, to get people broken down, to build people back up in a way that fits them into that mold of success that has been proven time and time and time again. We look at our Navy SEALs. We look at our Marines coaching in Brighton, surrounded by Marines. They have no idea how much I admired them. Never served in the military, never will.
Yeah.
But I always admired them. So looking at those proven systems and then seeing how to replicate those. So that's really what it's about. And when you're able to even find one book that aligns with your core values, your principles, and then you dive into that. And then you take it even chapter by chapter.
Yeah.
And when you stop saying to yourself, well, hey, I'm not performing if I don't read this many chapters a day. And instead, you might take time on a paragraph. You might dissect it. You're highlighting it. You're even taking time to write down, whether it be in your notes app or whether it be on paper in a journal. You're taking time to write down what's jumping off the page at you. And so for me, that's what I tackle in the out of season. It's mental training season because I'm trying to fill my mind and my spirit, and I'm trying to be physically healthy enough to be able to demonstrate some of these drills for these high school kids that can run circles around me, right?
Yeah.
We're knocking on the door of 50 here pretty quick. So we got to make sure physically we're staying in the game. But in the out of season, it's really about filling the bucket so that I have it to give it during the season.
Yeah. yeah.
And so for me during the season now, it's really about preparing for opponents. So I'm not in a bunch of books outside of the Word. I'm pouring into trying to study film, and there's so many things that I don't know. And isn't that the part that really holds us back, when we don't know what we don't know? And if we're not knee deep in it,
Yeah.
struggling through it,
Yeah.
saying, gosh, I really don't understand this. Man, how does Coach Woodruff stand at the board and draw this defense? How does he do that in such a way that's so easy to understand? But then when I get out on the field, I'm like, the dot hasn't connected yet. And then we go back in, and then he draws it again. And then we go out the field the next day, and all of a sudden it starts to make sense in a particular coverage that our outside linebacker spot drop. And now I understand the win, because I can't give the kids what I don't have.
Yeah.
And so for me, there's been a lot of humility in learning X's and O's.
Yeah.
But one thing I have come to the table with, because of those experiences we've talked about, has been more of the men molding.
Yes. Yep.
And I've had that
Which I think
offer.
is important, because there are people that understand the X's and O's. I think there are a lot of coaches that understand the X's and O's. I think there's a shortage of people really committed to developing the man.
And I don't believe that's intentional.
No, I don't either.
And I don't hear you saying that. And I think you and I can be transparent with each other and say, when we talk about not knowing what we don't know,
Yep.
how many of us tackle what's under the iceberg? But remember that life is hard. We can kick that hard can down the road, or we can do the heavy lifting now and start to unpack the past and heal from it and make sense of it and become comfortable in our own skin, so that we can go and do what these players need. We can be who they need us to be. We can role model what a servant's heart looks like, because we're living it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they can feel that. And they want to be like that. I know I want to be like people. You know, Steve Hale, he's a spiritual mentor of mine. David Gregg, a friend that was there for me when I was at my lowest back in 2010 to 12. Not a coincidence. I began coaching football in Brighton then. I was given what I needed when I needed it, and I didn't know I needed it. And so I see these coaches, in my challenge to them is work below the iceberg. You know, we focus on the outcome.
Yeah.
We assume that, I'm going to use Tom Brady because so many kids can relate to him as a hero figure.
Yep.
I think you and I can agree his combine tape with the 40 is laughable.
Yep.
The way he looks. I mean, you and I look more athletic than he looked in that combine.
Yeah.
He probably could run faster than me, but anyway. But the point is that you look at where he started, and it's really all about where he's at now and where he's finishing.
Yeah.
Nobody remembers that video except for us.
Yeah.
We laugh about it. These kids today weren't alive for that combine video.
Yes. And then to go on top of that, anybody that does see it, because there are people that see it now and they laugh and think, that's what he was like. Look at the work that he put in to get there. He's now a role model. He's now a hero, from that sense of like, this is what you can do. It's possible.
How do we help young people, or anyone, to recognize that it's the work done in the dark
Yeah.
that allows you to excel when the lights come on? What is that work that needs to be done in the dark in your life? And I think when you look in the mirror, you might not know everything you don't know, but I'm sure there's one thing that your heart's being pricked with that you know you need to get right. You know you either need to heal from it, you need to change that, and a lot of it is how we talk to ourselves. So if you don't have anything else to work on that's jumping out at you when you look in your eyes in the mirror, into your soul, what you say when you talk to yourself is really step one. And it's an ongoing struggle even when you're working on it.
It is. You catch yourself all the time.
And really it's, are we responding out of what's happening to us?
Yeah.
Is it a have to or a get to?
Yep.
And I don't know about you, but I have to say to myself, sometimes I get to.
Yeah. Yep. It's an everyday reminder, because there are days where you wake up and it's like, I don't want to do this today. And you have to give yourself kind of that motivation. But then when you sit and you think about the gratitude of like, I get to do this today. I'm waking up today. I'm healthy. I have the energy to do this. I have the tools to do this. I have the talent to do this. Like you think about the things and you start to be grateful for all those things. Now you start to move towards it versus all the ways that you talk to yourself where it's like, well, if I don't do it, it's not that big of a deal. I could just do it tomorrow. To your point at the very beginning, do you have a tomorrow?
And Trevor Moat, in his point that negativity, it's right every time.
Yeah.
And so catching yourself in the midst of a negative comment to yourself and saying, let me find the truth here.
Yes.
The truth is yes, what's happening right now, it's scary, it's anxiety provoking, it's overwhelming. I mean, whatever the emotion is that you're feeling, that you need to shift into a neutral mindset and then be able to find all the truth around you so that you can intentionally get back into that logical mind, shut that emotional mind off, and then find the next right step. And so I love the teacher in the book of Ecclesiastes. He says, there is nothing new under the sun. The knowledge, the wisdom, it's new to us as we learn it, and it goes from our head to our heart, oftentimes through difficult, challenging experiences. But nonetheless, there is nothing new. But we need to make sure that we are out and we are actively seeking those things that are going to heal the heart so that we can in turn give the heart, lead with the heart. People then feel that you love and care about them and their success. And having the courage to redefine success in our lives to where it aligns with our core values.
Kind of tying into those core values and also the topic of conversation we've had around balance at the beginning, before we started talking here on the recording, you talked about really being able to fill your buckets and do the things, and being an entrepreneur, still being able to coach. How do you create that balance, especially for entrepreneurs that are like working 24 hours a day and trying to figure it out? How did you get to a point where you can go coach on a high school coaching staff while your business is running or while you're running your business?
It's really about building the team. Without Rachel and Baria and Dylan, those are the three team members who are currently on the team. It doesn't happen. And I think it's striving to always be building them, blessing them, helping to fill the gaps in their knowledge, sharing the wisdom of experience as they run into different situations. Situational learning is the order of the day on the job, right? And it's making sure that I'm filling them. So then I have an opportunity to be able to give back. And when I'm on the field from 3 till after 5, but they can still access me by cell phone. They can text me. They can call me. I'm still getting emails. Coach Woodruff is so supportive. He understands the main thing is the main thing. And if I have to step off and take a call, I have to take the call. I know the difference. So for me, it's been building that team and making sure that I'm spending time listening to what's happening in their lives and what's important to them. And then always trying to be the very best coach they've ever had. And so what I've done is I've spent a lot of time thinking about the attributes of the coaches that I admire most and have blessed me most. And then I just try to be that person for them. And I try to personalize their coaching and their message. And instead of saying, do what I say, it's do what I do. Come follow me. In my opinion, the greatest leader of all time said, come follow me. And so living that, not being afraid to do every facet of the operation, taking payments. Agents don't. I'll have Customers say agents don't take payments. This agent does. It's great to talk with you. I don't think I've chatted with you. It's got to have at least been a year. What's going well in your life?
Yeah. And that stands out.
And so for me, that's what's allowed me to be able to coach. Because I remember the first 3 years of agency, it was 24/7 the agency. And
yeah.
I'm so grateful I've taken over for a godly man, Ed Wisniewski, my father-in-law, who passed at 62. Way too soon.
Yeah, way too soon.
But wow, did he leave an impact. He didn't need 80 years on this planet. He did it in 62.
Yeah.
So it was really he who built the relationship with many of those customers that were loyal and that stayed and that were patient with me as I found out who I was as an agent. Because, man, when the mantle falls, it is heavy. I remember sitting in the chair in my office on New Year's Eve of 2009 and just feeling, I went out, I looked at my name on the sign in lights, and I went in and I sat in the chair and I felt the mantle fall on my shoulders.
Wow.
And let me tell you what, that was humility. But it's the weight. You have to have weight to get stronger. You have to have resistance. You have to have adversity in all things. You don't grow in an environment free from pain and adversity.
Well, and take it back to moving to Australia. You talked about that a little bit ago, and being that's way out of your comfort zone. And the first thing I thought is like, that's where that growth happens, right? And then you talked about that was one of your biggest growth moments of your life.
And I look back on that and I say, if I had the chance to do it again, I would have done X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
But in the moment, we don't know what we don't know.
Yep.
We've said that a few times today. And we're just doing our best to move the needle where we're at. And I feel like that's another intentional pursuit. And every day, I'm striving to be even more present where my boots are planted. To be in that moment in the conversation and not letting my mind wander to the other things on a checklist that's performance and outcome based.
Yeah.
What's moving the needle for me in my heart? And how am I defining success? And running the agency, you have to grow to remain in business. It's an undeniable fact.
Mm-hmm.
But where is the growing? Are you just growing policies in force? Or are you growing your team? Are you growing a sports team, an organization you're volunteering in? How else are you growing? And so the definition of success from the time I sat in the chair as a new agent to now has dramatically changed. Always the desire to take care of the customer in a way that's remarkable service. But the heart in which it's done has become, in my mind, more clear, more pure, more focused. And as much as I trip over my own heart because I'm wired to wander, and as much as, I'm striving for success and I have to remind myself what success is, because, gosh, what happens in times of adversity?
Yep.
We fall into our training.
Yep.
And if we've trained and conditioned our minds to be performance and outcome based instead of falling in love with the process and stop trying to pull up the bamboo plant to see this incredible root system that's growing year after year after year before a sprout even comes out of the ground. We can't pull up the roots to see what's going on, right? So for me, the definition of success has also changed. And I think when I look back, I believe in my heart, I'll never regret the time spent coaching. I'll never regret treating my State Farm agency and my coaching as a ministry. I'll never regret that. I'll never regret the great people that I was blessed to meet. The people that you probably never knew how much I admired you and your brother. I never knew how much winning or learning impacted you, right?
Yep.
We don't know. And so because we don't know if and when someone's going to be blessed by what we have to say or what we have to share or what we're doing. We've just got to strive to live so that when we look back, regret, yes, we could have done things different. But the regret isn't there. What's there is the joy of the journey, blessing people in individual one-on-one relationships, recognizing that the power is in the one-on-one. And yes, in time, you bless many. But it's always about the one.
Sean, man, that is a mic drop moment. And this has been just a phenomenal conversation. I could go another couple hours in the studio, but I know you're busy. And I just want to say, you mentioned a couple of times, and I this is something that is like a core value inside me too, of that fallback position, right? You fall back to your training. And one thing that anytime I've ever talked about you or you've brought up your name amongst people that know you, it's like always, this guy doesn't have a bad day, or this guy, like, he is so much motivation, he's so much energy, he's so real, he's so vulnerable, right? And it's because it's who you are. It's you fall back to your training, right? And so you're living your life intentionally, and it's impacting so many people.
I'm humbled by that. We're all gifted. We all have spiritual gifts and gifting. I love Strategic Coach because it talks about, instead of spending time, I'm not good at golf. I love the relationships and playing with people, but it's never going to be about the outcome on the scorecard.
Good, because it gets worse once it does with anything in life, once it becomes about the outcome.
The reality is that why spend hours trying to get good at a game I'm never going to get good at? Spend time living in my strengths in the zone.
Yeah.
So that I have the best chance to be a blessing to others and move the needle for him. And so for me, that's really, I think in the final analysis, that's really what this is all about. It's really about making sure that our lives are centered within our passion, which is rooted in our purpose. Mm-hmm. And when our passion and our purpose intersect, we are able to live on fire. Caffeine, although I love caffeine, isn't necessary. Right now, I am filled with energy.
Yeah, I see it.
I love talking about the things that have blessed me because I want them to be a blessing to others. And so the bad days, they don't last. Because what we say when we talk to ourselves is true.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to recognize in that moment that what's happening is for me. It's not happening to me. I don't have to. I get to. And who is the one that I'm supposed to be a blessing to today?
Brother, it's been an absolute pleasure to see the fire and the passion in your eyes across from you for this hour and 15 minutes that we've been talking. It's absolute highlight of my day. Thank you so much for coming on down here.
Thank you for blessing me.
Absolutely.
And your son.
You blessed my, like I said, he was like, you're going to have Coach McGraw. I wish I could get down there, but today's basketball tryout. So
whether it's after a loss or it's after a victory, please make sure to tell Jax the best is yet to come.
I will. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks again.